In 2008, Army of Two burst onto the scene with an incredible idea: build a shooter entirely around co-op gameplay. This wasn't a game that treated co-op as a throwaway feature or an optional mode tacked on at the end of the game. It was built from the ground up specifically for two players. And in a market dominated by solo-focused campaigns and competitive multiplayer arenas, that alone made Army of Two stand out. But here we are over a decade later, and the franchise that once showed so much promise has all but vanished. To understand what went wrong, we need to go back to the mid to late 2000s, a time when the shooter landscape was in a state of massive change. 2008 was a turning point for shooters. Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare had just revolutionized first-person shooters with its cinematic campaign and addictive online multiplayer. Gears of War had defined the cover-based third-person shooter in 2006, introducing the now iconic roadie run and a heavier, grittier combat style. Players were beginning to demand more tactical and immersive shooter experiences, but the industry was largely focusing on solo campaigns or large-scale online battles. This left a gap. There weren't many games that leaned fully into a two-player teamwork-based game. Sure, Halo 3 had co-op, but it was primarily known for its competitive online modes. Army of Two spotted this niche and made it its identity. EA Montreal took a bold swing by entering the entire design around partnership. The game didn't just allow co-op, it demanded it. The aggro system, which let one player draw enemy fire while the other flanked, was something we hadn't seen before. The inclusion of co-op interactions, like carrying each other up walls or even reviving a partner by slapping them, gave the game a personality that resonated with players looking for something fresh. When Army of Two launched in March 2008 for Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, it immediately stood out. Rios and Salem weren't faceless soldiers, they were two masked mercenaries who joked, fist-bumped and argued their way through missions. The game had a buddy action movie vibe, which was a refreshing break from the self-serious tone of other military shooters. The reviews were mixed to positive. It scored a 73 on Metacritic for Xbox 360, with critics praising the unique focus on co-op mechanics, but criticizing the single-player AI, which often felt like babysitting rather than teamwork. IGN called it a great co-op experience wrapped in an average shooter, while GameSpot criticized its cliched story, but acknowledged its engaging mechanics when playing with a friend. Commercially, the game did well enough to justify a sequel. It sold 1.3 million units within its first month. Not a Call of Duty juggernaut, but solid for a new IP. Its success came down to timing. Gamers were hungry for a new experience on the Xbox 360 and PS3, and Army of Two's focus on co-op felt like a breath of fresh air. 2 years later, EA Montreal followed up with Army of Two: The 40th Day. Released in January 2010, the sequel aimed to refine the mechanics while dialing down the over-the-top humor for a slightly darker, more serious tone. The game setting, Shanghai under siege, was visually striking, and its branching moral choices added replay value. The sequel's weapon customization system was a highlight, allowing players to mix and match gun parts to create absurd or efficient weapon builds. Co-op gameplay remained strong, but the formula felt less fresh. It was still fun, but the magic of discovering this new co-op concept was largely gone. The 40th Day scored slightly higher than its predecessor, averaging around 75 on Metacritic, with critics noting improved level design and co-op play. However, its story was described as unfocused and uninspired. Players who loved the first game enjoyed the new weapons and smoother mechanics, but the general public wasn't as excited. The game didn't have the same cultural impact as the original, partly because the shooter market in 2010 was far more competitive. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 had released just a few months earlier and was dominating the market with its cinematic campaign and explosive multiplayer. Compared to that, Army of Two felt like a niche product. Sales were respectable, but already weaker than the first game, coming in around 1 million copies sold within the first few months. EA started to lose confidence in the franchise's ability to grow into a blockbuster series. By 2013, the landscape had shifted yet again. Live service games were starting to dominate, with Call of Duty turning into a yearly juggernaut and Battlefield 3 showcasing huge multiplayer battles. EA was trying to position itself to compete, and smaller franchises like Army of Two weren't getting the same resources or attention. Enter The Devil's Cartel, developed by Visceral Games, best known for Dead Space. This third entry tried to reboot the series with new characters, Alpha and Bravo, replacing Rios and Salem as the protagonists. It also dropped many of the quirky elements that made the franchise unique, such as the bro interactions and humour. What was left felt generic and soulless. The game bombed with critics, scoring a 53 on Metacritic. Reviewers called it bland, uninspired, and a step backwards in terms of gameplay variety. The weapon customization system was stripped down, and the story was forgettable. The Devil's Cartel sold poorly, failing to even match the first game's launch numbers. Some reports suggest it sold less than 300,000 units in its launch window, a massive decline that effectively killed the franchise. EA Montreal, which had been partly involved in the series' early development, was later shuttered. Several factors contributed to the fall of Army 2. First, its identity crisis. The first game had personality and a unique hook. By the third game, EA had stripped away most of what had made the series memorable, leaving a generic cover shooter that couldn't compete. Second, market evolution. Between 2008 and 2013, the shooter landscape had transformed. The rise of annualized juggernauts like Call of Duty and the growing dominance of online multiplayer meant players were less interested in a niche co-op campaign. Third, poor timing. By the time the Devil's Cartel released, players were already looking for next-gen experiences, with the PS4 and Xbox One just months away. And fourth and last, EA's focus shift. EA's priorities were moving towards big live service hits like Battlefield and FIFA Ultimate Team, leaving little room for smaller franchises like Army of Two. Ironically, now would actually be the perfect time for an Army of Two revival. In a gaming landscape oversaturated with battle royales and live service shooters, a tight story-driven co-op experiences would actually stand out. The success of games like A Way Out, It Takes Two, Return to Savage Planet, and many, many more prove that there's still a hunger for cooperative adventures. If EA were to bring back Army of Two, leaning into its buddy comedy tone, embracing deep customization, and perhaps even offering couch co-op as a main feature, it could find a dedicated audience. But as of now, EA seems content to let the franchise remain in the vault. The rise and fall of Army of Two is a classic story of a good idea that lost its way. It launched at a perfect time in 2008, when co-op shooters were rare and gamers were eager for new experiences. But with each sequel, EA stripped away what made the original special, and by 2013, Army of Two was just another face in the crowd. Will it ever return? Probably not soon. There are absolutely no rumours at any corner of the games industry of anyone even remotely looking at refreshing Army of Two, which for me is a shame. I adored the series. Yes, the third game was heavily watered down and lost the spirit of what made the other two so good, but I have the fondest of memories of playing co-op Army of Two 1 and 2 with friends over and over again. Army of Two will always be remembered as a series that dared to put friendship and teamwork at the center of a shooter, long before the rest of the industry realized how powerful an idea that could be. If you've enjoyed the video, please do like and subscribe, and until next time, something.